Marie-Julie Jahenny was not a person the world would have expected to carry a message for the future. She lived in a small village in 19th century France, far from the cities, away from politics, noise, and fame. Her life was quiet. She lived in prayer, in suffering, and in silence. But within that silence, she said she heard something not from her own thoughts, but from heaven. She claimed to have received messages, visions of things to come. Most people at the time didn't pay attention. They saw her as just another mystic, one of many who came and went in the old days. But now, more than 100 years later, some of her words are being read again. And for some people, they no longer sound like the past. They sound like now. Among the many things Marie-Julie shared, one stands out clearly. She said there would be a time in the future when the world would begin to change in a deep and powerful way. This change wouldn't come from war or one single event, but from something slower, something quieter. A loss of direction, a kind of spiritual silence. Not the silence you hear with your ears, but the silence in the human heart. A silence where truth fades, where faith weakens, and where meaning begins to disappear. What makes this message so striking is not just what she said, but when she said it. She gave a specific year. She spoke of the year 2025 as a turning point. Not a date of one dramatic event, but a time when the world would begin to slide into something new. She described the period marked by distraction, noise, confusion, and change. And when we look at the world today, it's hard not to wonder, was she seeing something? Back in the late 1800s, there was no internet. There was no television, no digital noise, no global media. Yet Marie-Julie described a future society overwhelmed by constant distractions. A place where people would choose entertainment over truth, comfort over meaning. She said people would grow tired of hearing what is true. They would become numb to the sacred. She called it a time of spiritual fatigue, a time when prayer and faith would feel less important in everyday life. And that's what draws attention now, because many people feel that we are living in that time. She wasn't alone in speaking of such things. Years later, in 1917, the children at Fatima in Portugal also reported visions and warnings. They said the Virgin Mary appeared to them and shared urgent messages. These messages were about prayer, about returning to God, about avoiding a path that would lead to sorrow. The first Fatima vision showed a place of deep suffering. The second warned of a great war. The third, which was kept secret for many years, spoke of a spiritual trial that would affect the entire world and the church. But what many people don't know is that Marie-Julie Jahenny was speaking about these same themes decades earlier. She warned of hardship, loss of faith, and a kind of sleep that would settle over humanity. Marie-Julie wasn't trying to predict exact events like names or dates of wars. She was talking about the soul of the world, about what happens when people slowly drift away from what is holy and true. Her warnings weren't about punishment. They were calls to wake up. She said again and again that God was giving people a chance to return, a chance to choose differently. Her visions always came with a door that could be opened through prayer, repentance, and change. One of the most powerful visions she had came in December 1881. In that vision, she saw something new. A kind of spiritual silence spreading across the earth. It was not silence like peace. It was the silence of people who had stopped listening, who had stopped searching for meaning, who had closed their hearts. She said confusion would spread faster than truth, that people would forget their purpose, that leaders would forget their role, and that even whole nations would become focused only on themselves. This wasn't just about religion. It wasn't political, it was spiritual. It was about the way the human soul drifts when it stops looking for something higher. In her own time, people couldn't understand. The world still seemed strong in faith. But slowly, as the decades passed, Her words began to feel more familiar. They started to sound like the world we see around us now. A world where truth is questioned, where values shift, where noise fills every space, and silence, the kind that leads to prayer, is almost impossible to find. What's especially interesting is that she pointed directly to 2025. She didn't say everything would end in that year, but she said it would be the beginning of a great shift. A time when distractions would become even greater. When people would be drawn into global events that looked joyful on the surface, but left something missing underneath. And now, as 2025 approaches, more people are thinking about what she said. In one vision, she described a massive public event. She didn't name it, but she said it would draw the attention of the whole world. It would appear bright and inspiring, a celebration, but it would also carry spiritual consequences. She said symbols of faith would be shown in new ways that looked modern, but actually took away their deeper meaning. Rituals would change, not to bring people closer to God, but to entertain. This would not be a direct attack on the sacred. It would be something more subtle, a quiet changing of what is holy into something hollow. This is where some have started to draw connections. The 2024 Olympic Games will be held in Paris, the same country where Marie-Julie lived. It will be a global event, watched by millions, filled with beauty, performance, and symbols. There's nothing wrong with celebration or sports. But some who know Marie-Julie's prophecies feel a deep unease. Not because of the Olympics themselves, but because of what such events can represent in a time of spiritual distraction. The fear is not about the games. It's about what we replace in our hearts. According to her visions, moments like this are not without results. When what is sacred is forgotten or changed for entertainment, the world responds. Not as a punishment, but as a wake-up call. Marie-Julie said nature itself would begin to shift. Storms, earthquakes, sudden and strange weather events, not to destroy, but to get our attention. She said the changes would begin quietly in places no one expects. And then they would spread. Not all at once, but in waves. Each wave bringing more change, more questions, more chances to reflect. She didn't say these things to create fear. In fact, she always reminded people that there was hope. That prayer mattered. That faith could turn things around. That even when people go far from truth, it is never too late to return. Her messages were not final judgments. They were warnings full of mercy. And that's the heart of her prophecies. Not fear, but love. A deep love that wants to save the world before it's too late. When we think about the future, it's easy to look for signs in the sky, in the news, or in global events. But Marie-Julie said the real change begins inside, in our choices, in what we value, in what we turn toward when we are tired or confused. That's why her words matter now more than ever. Not because of one event in 2025, but because of the path the world is on. She spoke of a tipping point. A moment when enough small choices could lead to something big. Not a moment of fireworks, but of slow and powerful change. A change that would reshape not just governments, but souls. She said that the real crisis would be spiritual. A crisis of forgetting what is sacred. Of losing the sense of wonder and silence that connects us to God. And this is where we find the deepest meaning in her prophecy. It's not about guessing dates or predicting disasters. It's about asking, where are we heading? What are we building our lives on? What do we trust, and what do we ignore? These are the questions she wanted people to ask. Because the future is not fixed. It is shaped by the decisions we make. And those decisions, one by one, create the world to come. As we move closer to the year 2025, Marie-Julie Jahenny's words offer something rare, not just a warning, but a mirror. A way to look at our world and ask if we're listening. If we still know what matters. If we can still hear the quiet voice of truth beneath all the noise. Her message is not one of doom, but of awakening. She invites each person to pause, to pray, and to return to what is real. To remember that even when the world seems lost, the heart can still choose light over darkness. Her life, though hidden and simple, gave a message that now echoes louder than ever, and that message is this: the future is not written in stone. It is written in our hearts,